The Aurora Luxury Ball was not merely an event, it was a statement of power. Held within the glass and steel cathedral of the Halcyon Hotel, it was Port Sterling's annual coronation of wealth. Crystal chandeliers, vast as frozen waterfalls, poured light down upon the attendees, striking sparks from diamond necklaces and turning silk gowns to liquid ice. Nora Vale moved through this glittering ocean like a ghost. At 25, she was a former journalism student whose dreams had been foreclosed, leaving her to navigate the precarious world of high-end contract waiting. Her black uniform was a shield, rendering her invisible. She kept her eyes down, her tray steady, and her path clear of the predators swimming in these waters, the politicians, the heiresses, and the men who owned the city, block by block. Whispers slithered through the polite din of the orchestra. They were not for the movie stars. They were for him, Cassian Verratti, the host, the benefactor of the Diamond Fund, the discreet billionaire, the whispered dawn of the Verratti Consortium. His name was spoken in hushed reverence and calculated fear, but the true currency of the night's gossip was not Cassian, but his shadow, his son. The room was waiting, breathing in, to see if Rowan Verratti, the silent son, would make an appearance. Nora refilled a flute with champagne, her movements economical. She passed a marble alcove, screened by a massive fern. Two men, their tuxedos sharp enough to cut, spoke in low tones, believing themselves hidden. "The manifest for Silo 13 is live," one murmured, his back to her. "And the asset," the other replied. "It unlocks tonight. The window is absolute." Silo 13, the name snagged in Nora's dormant journalistic mind. It sounded cold, metallic, secret. Before she could process it, her path was blocked. A man, his face flushed with champagne and entitlement, swayed. He was a shipping magnate. Nora recognized him from the society pages. He reached not for a glass, but for her. "Well, look what we have here," he slurred. Nora tried to step back, but his grip tightened on her arm. Her tray tilted, a bottle of vintage champagne, worth more than her monthly rent, arced through the air. It did not just break, it exploded. The sound of shattering crystal was a gunshot in the opulent hall. The music stopped. Every head turned. The shipping magnate, enraged by the mess on his $1,000 shoes, yanked Nora forward, his fingers digging into her skin. "You clumsy little—" Flash, flash, flash. The tabloid cameras, sensing blood in the water, descended. The light was blinding, pinning Nora like an insect. She was exposed, humiliated, and utterly alone. And then she was not. He moved like a blade of shadow, a physical manifestation of the room's sudden silence. Rowan Verratti, 27 years old, tall and lean in a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to drink the light. He did not speak. He did not have to. He simply stepped between Nora and the cameras, eclipsing her with his own body. He faced the drunk magnate. Rowan's eyes were the color of a gathering storm, a deep, turbulent gray. He did not raise a hand. He did not make a threat. He just looked. It was a look of absolute Arctic stillness, a void that promised consequences. The magnate, his drunken bravado evaporating, physically recoiled. The cameras froze, the photographers lowering their lenses as if commanded. The entire grand ballroom, filled with the most powerful people in Port Sterling, held its collective breath. Two of the Halcyon's internal security, men built like bank vaults, materialized and smoothly extracted the magnate, who was now apologizing profusely to the floor. The spell broke. A new figure emerged from the crowd, Cassian Verratti. He was older, his hair a distinguished silver, his presence radiating an authority that dwarfed his son's intensity. He placed a heavy, grounding hand on Rowan's shoulder, a silent message. Enough. But as Cassian's gaze swept over the scene, it stopped. It fixed on Nora. It was not a look of anger, but of sharp, sudden recognition, as if he had seen a ghost at his party. Nora, trembling, just wanted to disappear. She bent to retrieve her fallen tray, a reflex of her job, as she did. Her fingers brushed against something cool and plastic on the deep pile carpet, hidden near the fern where the men had been whispering. It was a key card, dropped, no doubt, in the commotion. She glanced at it. It was not a Halcyon room key. It bore a stark official logo, a stylized O containing a scale of justice. Beneath it, the words Office of Metropolitan Integrity. Oh my. She palmed it. The instinct was immediate, the muscle memory of a reporter who could never quite quit. When she straightened up, the Veratis were still there. Cassian was already turning away, dismissing her. The incident concluded. But Rowan had not moved. He was looking at her again, his stormy eyes tracking her every micro-expression. He saw her, really saw her, in a way that made her feel more exposed than the cameras had. His lips were pressed into a thin line, the physical punctuation of his vow of silence. But his hand, resting at his side, moved. It was subtle, a flicker of fingers. He signed one word in ASL, a gesture so swift she almost missed it. Careful. The orchestra conductor, taking his cue from Cassian's departing back, raised his baton. The music swelled, filling the vacuum. The chatter resumed, desperate to cover the rupture. But the gala's atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. The Aurora Luxury Ball was still loud, but in another, more profound way. The room was still silent. Every eye, though pretending not to, was fixed on the invisible, supercharged line that now connected the silent son of the city's most dangerous man and the waitress who had just picked up a secret. The adrenaline from the ballroom confrontation had not yet faded when Nora's hand, still clutching the OMI keycard, found the service corridor. The air here was colder, smelling of ozone and industrial bleach, a stark contrast to the perfume and champagne outside. She paused at a heavy steel door marked Logistics, Authorized Personnel Only. Driven by an impulse she had not felt in years, she held the card to the black sensor. A solid, expensive click echoed in the hallway. The light turned green. The lock mechanism was a whisper, but to Nora, it was a roar. The former journalism student, the one who chased stories until her leads ran dry and her savings evaporated, was wide awake. Her curiosity, sharp and painful, was back. She pushed the door open. The hallway beyond was a network of polished concrete and color-coded lines. Taped to the wall was a detailed schematic of the entire Gala's operational footprint. Nora pulled out her phone, angled it to avoid the glare, and snapped 3 quick, clear photos of the map. A clatter of pans and a burst of high-strung French drew her toward the kitchens. She kept to the shadows, just another uniform in the chaos. "He nearly killed him," a sous chef hissed, wiping his brow. "Mr. Cassian himself, calling down 2 minutes before service, changed the entire dessert plate." "What was it?" another voice asked. "The amaretto mousse." He remembered his son's allergy. Almonds, can you believe it? We had to replate 500 desserts. Nora filed the information away. An allergy, a detail of vulnerability. She moved deeper into the labyrinth, following the signs toward internal receiving. A courier in a crisp gray uniform was handing a clipboard to an event supervisor. The courier's bag was locked, but the package he'd just delivered sat on the desk, waiting for dispatch. It was a single black envelope, thick cardstock, sealed with no wax, but embossed with a complex, stylized flower, an orchid. Nora knew the whispers of Port Sterling. This was the mark of the Orchid Syndicate, the Verratti Consortium's chief and bloodiest rival. A fox delivering a message to the lion's den. As she watched, a figure stepped into the receiving bay, blocking her view. "Can I help you?" The voice was smooth but laced with iron. Nora looked up at Marco Silas, an event supervisor she'd seen earlier, his name visible on his badge. He was not kitchen staff. He was management, his suit a different cut from the security team's. He was smiling, but it did not reach his eyes. "Just lost," Nora said, trying to sound flustered. "Looking for the dry storage annex." "This is receiving. Wayward staff go that way," Silas said. He gestured back the way she came, a sharp, dismissive motion. As his hand moved, his sleeve rode up. On the pale skin of his inner wrist, Nora saw a scar, white and puckered. It was a perfect V shape. "The Gala is that way." Nora nodded. "Sorry to bother you," and retreated. The image of the scar and the black envelope burned into her mind. She consulted the map on her phone, finding a different route. A utility stairwell led her up to a narrow, dark catwalk, a technical balcony overlooking a private lounge 1 floor below the main ballroom. And down below, Cassian Verratti was not alone. He stood with another man, older, with a politician's perfect hair and a predator's stillness. Nora recognized him from her research days. Dre Archer, the director of the Office of Metropolitan Integrity, the OMI, the owner of the card in her pocket. They were not shouting, they were speaking in low, compressed tones. Their bodies were angled toward each other, a tableau of cooperation and threat. As Nora watched, Dre Archer smiled, and Cassian clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture that looked less like friendship and more like a test of structural integrity. They shook hands, a hard, brief grip that was an agreement and a challenge. Nora backed away, her heart hammering. The OMI and the Verratti consortium were not adversaries. They were partners. She fled the balcony, her legs unsteady. She had to get out, but her path forced her back through a service entrance into the main ballroom. As she slipped through the curtain, her eyes met his. Rowan. He was standing near the doorway, as if he had been waiting. He had not moved from the spot, a silent sentinel. His gray eyes were not stormy now. They were sharp, surgical. They scanned her face, noting the flush on her cheeks, the slight tremble in her hands. His gaze was a question, plain as day. "Where were you? What are you doing?" Nora could not speak, could not sign. She just gave a small, stiff nod, a desperate attempt to signal normalcy, and pushed past him, disappearing into the crowd of oblivious guests. She grabbed a tray of empty glasses, needing the anchor of her job. She set it down at a service station, activating the small tablet used for staff orders. A notification was waiting. It was not from her manager. The sender was anonymous. The message was one line. "Silo 13 opens at 11:47. Advise you move away from the LED backdrop." Nora's blood ran cold. 11:47. She checked the tablet's clock. 11:43. 4 minutes. Silo 13, the phrase from the alcove, the name from the anonymous email. She looked at the grand stage. A massive, glittering, state-of-the-art LED screen served as the backdrop for the orchestra. She dropped the tray. She ran. Using the map on her phone, she found the AV control room. The door was propped open a crack. She slipped inside. Banks of electronics pulsed with quiet lights, and there, on the main control board for the LED wall, was a device that did not belong. It was not a bomb meant to kill. It was smaller, wired directly to the power feed, a high-density signal scrambler, a device designed to create a massive electromagnetic pulse, a signal bomb aimed to perfectly and instantly blind every camera, wipe every server, and corrupt every audio feed in the room. The wall clock read 11:45, 2 minutes. Her instincts took over. Someone was opening Silo 13, and someone else wanted to erase all record of it. She saw the main power line to the device. She could cut it, stop it. She reached forward. A hand clamped down on hers. It was not violent, but it was absolute, warm, strong, and stopping her cold. She gasped and turned. Rowan Verratti stood behind her, his form filling the small room. His face was granite, his eyes flashing a silent, desperate warning. He shook his head, a sharp, violent negative. He released her hand only to point up. In the corner, hidden in the shadows of a ventilation duct, was a tiny, blinking red light, a camera. Not part of the hotel's main security, but something else. Someone was watching them. Rowan looked at her, his expression urgent. He grabbed her wrist, not her hand, and pointed to a dark exit at the back of the room. His meaning was clear. Follow me." Rowan's grip was not a request, it was a statement. He pulled her from the humming electronics of the AV room, his strength surprising, and guided her down a short, carpeted hallway she had not noticed. He knew this building, its hidden veins. He shouldered open a heavy, soundproofed door and pushed her inside, following so closely she felt the heat of his body at her back. They were in a supplementary banquet room. The air was still and cool, smelling of dust and waxed wood. Tables were stacked in the corner, and the chairs were draped in white shrouds, like a graveyard of forgotten parties. The only light came from the city glow bleeding through the heavy curtains. Rowan released her wrist. The silence in the room was heavier, more profound than his own. He pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, the sudden light of the screen illuminating his face in sharp angles. His thumbs moved with blurring speed. He held the screen out to her. "Don't be a hero. Someone is waiting to catch you." Nora's voice was a ragged whisper, a harsh contrast to his digital words. "Catch me or catch us. If I didn't cut that wire, they'll erase the evidence. Whatever Silo 13 is. Who benefits from that?" She was breathing hard, the image of the hidden camera burning in her mind. Rowan's stormy eyes locked on hers. He typed again, the small clicks of the keys sounding like gunshots in the quiet. "Everyone and no one. The Orchid Syndicate wants to blame the Virati Consortium. They want this Gala to be our failure. They planted the bomb." "But the OMI," Nora argued, her hand instinctively tightening around the card in her pocket. "I saw your father with Dre Archer. They're working together." Rowan's jaw tightened. He was about to reply when a smooth, hydraulic hiss cut through the air. A private elevator, concealed behind a panel of dark mahogany, slid open. The light from within was soft, golden, and it framed the imposing figure of Cassian Virati. He stepped out, his expression unruffled, as if he were merely checking on the wine selection. His gaze moved from Nora to his son and back to Nora. "The LED wall is dark," Cassian announced, his voice a calm baritone. The signal bomb had detonated. "The media feeds are chaos. Excellent timing." He looked directly at Nora, his eyes not just seeing her, but dissecting her. "My son," he said, "does not speak. It is a choice he made long ago. But tonight, he chose to protect you. In my world, actions are the only currency that matters. That is enough for me." His gaze dropped, with pinpoint accuracy, to Nora's right hand, which she held clenched at her side. "You're trembling, Miss Vale, but you're holding something that does not belong to you. Give me the OMI card." It was not a request, it was an order, delivered with the casual authority of a king. Nora's hand was slick with sweat. This was the man who owned the city, the Don. But the journalist in her, the angry daughter of a man she believed was wronged by power like this, was stronger than the waitress. She held her ground. She did not open her fist. "I will," she said. Her voice was shaking, but it did not break. "On one condition. Tell me what Silo 13 is." Rowan made a sharp negative gesture, a silent, frantic no. But Cassian Virati smiled. It was a cold, sharp-edged expression, a flash of white teeth in the dim light. "Bold," he assessed. "Silo 13. It is a vault, a digital depository where all the great families of this city, ours included, keep their financial skeletons. It is a mutually assured destruction pact, written in code. It is the kind of secret people kill for. The men in the alcove said it unlocks tonight." Nora pushed, the pieces clicking together with terrifying speed. "So, who wanted the LED wall blown? Who wanted the cameras blind?" "The ones who want to steal the master key manifest," Cassian said, stepping closer. The smell of his expensive cologne, something like cedar and old money, enveloped her. "The ones who want to steal it from me." Fwoom! The world vanished. The emergency lights, the screen from Rowan's phone, the ambient light from the hallway, everything went black. It was a total, suffocating darkness, lasting only a second, maybe two. A high-pitched whine signaled the emergency generators kicking in. Dim red lights, spaced far apart, flickered on, bathing the room in an infernal glow. And everything had changed. Nora was no longer standing. She was being held, an arm like a steel bar locked across her chest, pulling her backward, something hard and impossibly sharp pressed against the soft skin of her throat. "Nobody moves," a voice hissed in her ear. Marco Silas, the event supervisor. His face was no longer smooth. It was a mask of cold fury, his eyes darting between Cassian and Rowan. The V-shaped scar on his wrist was stark in the red light. "The girl has the card, Cassian," Silas spat. "She gives it to me, or the Verratti heir gets to watch me paint the drapes with his new friend." The weapon at her throat was not metal. It was a ceramic knife, matte black, designed to bypass metal detectors. Cassian Verratti did not move. His face was marble. "You are making a grave error, Marco." The error was trusting you. But Nora was not looking at Cassian. She was looking at Rowan. He had not moved toward her. He had not rushed. He stood in the center of the room, a perfect, calculated distance from them. He had positioned himself as a shield, not for her, but to her. He was between the knife and any hope of her escape, yet he was also her only barrier to Cassian. He was utterly still, his storm-gray eyes locked only on Marco. He looked through the supervisor as if he were glass. He was not breathing hard. He was not afraid. He was calculating. Then, slowly, he raised his left hand, palm up, into the dim red light. It was empty, except for the object resting in the center. It was his tie clip, a simple bar of brushed titanium. Marco hesitated, his eyes flickering to the hand. "What? You're going to—" Rowan didn't throw it. He didn't use it as a weapon. He simply angled his palm. The red emergency light struck the polished, beveled edge of the titanium. It caught the beam, concentrated it, and flashed a single, blinding, razor-thin line of crimson light directly into Marco Silas's eyes. It was a sniper's shot, made with reflected light. Silas roared, an involuntary spasm of pain. His grip loosened by a fraction. His head jerked back. It was not a second, it was half a second, It was all Rowan needed. But Rowan didn't move. Security did. 2 of Cassian's personal guards, the ones from the ballroom, materialized from the service elevator. Drawn by the blackout, they saw the scene, the knife, the opening. They lunged. Marco Silas was fast. He shoved Nora to the floor, using her as a shield to block the guard's advance. He scrambled backward, slamming his shoulder into the main door. He was gone. One of the guards helped Nora up. She was shaking, her throat burning where the ceramic had pressed. Rowan was at her side in an instant, his hands hovering, not touching her, his eyes scanning her for injury. The guard spoke. "He's gone, sir. Headed for the loading docks." Cassian retrieved the titanium tie clip from the floor. He handed it back to his son. "He won't be found." A low voice echoed from the hallway where Marco had fled. It was his, distant, but clear in the sudden quiet, a promise and a threat. "Pier 9 Dawn. My personal driver will take you home, Miss Vale," Cassian Verratti said, his voice cutting through the adrenaline-thinned air of the banquet room. "You have been inconvenienced enough. You are dismissed." Nora's throat still ached where the ceramic blade had pressed. Home. The word sounded foreign, like a place on a map she had never visited. A tiny, one-bedroom apartment where Marco Silas, or someone worse, could find her before her key was even in the lock. She looked at Cassian, the man who commanded armies with a lift of his eyebrow, and then at Rowan, who commanded silence with his mere presence. "No," Nora said. Her voice was steady, surprising even herself. "Thank you, but no. That man, Marco, he knows my face. My apartment isn't safe. And you," she looked at Cassian, "you have a problem. Silo 13, the Oh My, the Orchid Syndicate. I saw it. I'm part of it now. I want to help clean up the mess." Cassian studied her, his gaze sharp enough to strip paint. He was weighing her, calculating her value versus her risk. Rowan stepped half an inch closer to Nora. It It was all he needed to do. Cassian nodded once, a curt, final gesture. Very well, but you are no longer staff. You are a guest in the eye of the storm. He turned to his son. See to her, I will handle Archer. As Cassian and his guards swept out of the room, Nora and Rowan were left alone in the red emergency light. She had 1,000 questions, but one stood above the rest. Why did you help me? Why don't you talk? Rowan watched her for a long moment, as if parsing the very concept of her question. He took out his phone. The light was painfully bright. He typed, I am quiet by choice. Words betrayed my mother. He showed her the screen. The sentence hung in the air, raw and exposed. It was not an explanation, it was a confession, a wound deep and old that had shaped him. Nora felt a sudden, sharp ache of empathy. This was not a defect, it was a scar. Okay, she breathed, nodding. Okay. He motioned for her to follow. They moved through the service corridors, a different, more urgent route that led to the subterranean parking garage. The air grew cool and damp, smelling of concrete and exhaust. My car is just an old sedan, Nora said, her voice echoing. Level P2, staff section. They found it, a 10-year-old, unremarkable blue car parked under a flickering fluorescent light. Nora reached for her keys, but Rowan put a hand on her arm, stopping her. He looked around, then strode to a red emergency rescue kit on the wall. With a single, sharp blow from his elbow, he shattered the plastic cover, ignoring the small alarm that chirped weakly. He rooted inside, bypassing bandages, and pulled out a heavy, industrial neodymium magnet, the size of his palm, used for retrieving dropped tools. He walked to her car. He did not look under it. He simply ran the heavy magnet along the underside of the rear bumper. Clack. He crouched, pulled the magnet away, and held up a small black disc with an adhesive back, a microwave tracker. He tossed it to the concrete and brought his heel down, crushing it into plastic shrapnel. Before Nora could even process the violation, the entire garage was flooded with flashing red lights, steel gates groaning, slammed down, sealing the exits. A synthesized voice boomed over the PA system. By order of the Office of Metropolitan Integrity, this building is under a full public safety lockdown. All exits are sealed. Remain in place. From their position, they could see a section of the main lobby through a reinforced glass door. Dre Archer was there, flanked by uniformed OMI agents, directing them with sharp, curt gestures. He looked up, a thin, cold smile of triumph on his face. He's not investigating, Nora whispered, her blood turning to ice. He's hunting. He's looking for the key. Mr. Verratti. A new voice, one of Cassian's guards. He had appeared from a stairwell. The boss anticipated this. He wants you and the young lady to use the maintenance exit. But first, he handed Nora a flat, cardboard box, the kind disposable server gloves came in. He said you should hold this. Keep it safe until morning. Nora tore it open. Inside, nestled in the sterile white folds of a pair of gloves, was a single, matte black USB flash drive, the secondary key to Silo 13. We must move, the guard said, turning. The lockdown won't hold the boss's enemies. He never finished the sentence. 2 black SUVs, their engines roaring, lights off, screeched around the corner. They stopped, and 4 men in dark tactical gear, faces covered, piled out. Orchid Syndicate. Go, the guard shouted, drawing his own weapon and moving to intercept. Rowan did not run. He shoved Nora hard behind a thick concrete support pillar. Stay, his eyes commanded. The guard was overwhelmed in seconds. The 4 men advanced. Rowan stepped out from the shadows. He moved. It was not a fight. It was a kind of violent, precise choreography. He never took a direct hit, flowing around their punches, using their own momentum against them. His hands were blurs, striking not with fists but with open palms, fingertips and elbows, a sharp jab to the throat, a hyper-extending strike to a knee, a brutal, elegant spin that ended with one man's head connecting with the pillar. He was not a brawler, he was a dancer. He disabled, he dismantled, he did not kill. In less than a minute, 3 men were on the ground, groaning or unconscious. The fourth, the leader, had been engaged with the guard. He shoved the guard aside, raised a handgun, and aimed it directly at Rowan's chest. Nora, peeking from behind the pillar, did not scream. She did not have time. She saw the red fire extinguisher mounted on the pillar, her hands slick with sweat, fumbled with the pin, pulling it free. She stepped out, aimed the nozzle, and squeezed. A massive, blinding white cloud of CO2 foam exploded from the extinguisher, enveloping the gunman. He roared in shock, firing blind. The shot was deafening, the bullet sparking harmlessly off the ceiling. In the chaos of the white cloud, Rowan moved. He was a shadow within the fog. There was a dull, heavy thud, and the gunman crumpled to the floor, his weapon skittering away. The air was thick with the chemical smell. Sirens wailed, closer now. Rowan grabbed Nora's hand. His was warm and steady. They ran, leaving the groaning men and the bruised guard behind. They found the maintenance tunnel, a low, dark passage that smelled of rust, and burst out into the night, rain starting to fall on Port Sterling. They did not stop for 10 blocks. They found refuge in the Starboard, a 24-hour cafe, its neon sign casting a weary, buzzing glow. It was an oasis of bright light and the smell of stale coffee. They slid into a worn vinyl booth in the back. Nora's body began to betray her. The adrenaline evaporated, leaving a bone-deep cold. She started to shake, her teeth chattering, her hands trembling so violently she had to hide them under the table. Rowan watched her, his expression unreadable. He slid out of the booth, went to the counter, and returned a minute later. He set a steaming ceramic mug down on the table in front of her. Hot cocoa! He slid back into the booth. His stormy eyes, for the first time, were soft. Nora's phone vibrated on the table. A new text, an unknown number. Pier 9 at dawn. Trust no badges. The Starboard Cafe was an island of harsh light in the rainy dark. The neon sign buzzed, casting a sickly pink glow on the water streaming down the windows. Nora's hands, which had been shaking uncontrollably, were finally still. She held them wrapped around the thick ceramic mug, absorbing the warmth of the hot cocoa Rowan had placed before her. He sat opposite her, perfectly still, his suit jacket now damp from their run. His stillness was not an absence, it was a presence. It was a vacuum that pulled the truth from her. "You deserve to know why I am not running," she said, her voice low. The lone night shift worker was in the back, mopping. They were alone. "Why I am holding on to this." She tapped the pocket of her ruined uniform, where the box containing the USB drive and the OMI card now rested. Rowan just watched her, his gray eyes patient. "My father, he was a city building inspector," Nora began, staring into the mug. "Honest, too honest for Port Sterling. About 6 years ago, he found structural code violations in a downtown high-rise, big ones that could bring the building down. He refused to sign off." She took a shaky breath. 2 weeks later, he was arrested. Bribery, tampering with evidence. They produced photos, bank statements, all of it fake, all of it perfect. He was destroyed. He was wrongly accused, and no one would listen. I went to journalism school to find the people who framed him. I swore I would get the truth. "I got close," she whispered. "Too close. I found a paper trail that led high up to people who did not like to be found. My apartment was broken into. Not a robbery, a warning, everything tossed. My research gone. I got threats, specific ones, about the depth of the Port Sterling River. So I quit. I dropped out of school. I stopped digging. I became a waitress to disappear." She looked up at him, her eyes burning. "I have been so tired of being afraid. Tonight, seeing this, hearing Silo 13, it feels like the same monster, the same web of power that broke my father. I am done running." Rowan's expression had not changed, but a depth had entered his eyes. He had not just heard her, he had absorbed her story. He picked up his phone. The screen cast him in blue light. He typed for a long time, his thumbs sure and fast. He turned the screen to her. It was not my mother. That was a lie to simplify for my father's men. It was for Matteo. Nora frowned. Matteo. He typed again, his gaze fixed on the screen, as if revisiting a ghost. My older brother? He was sick for a long time. Years ago. Our rivals put pressure on him. He was a witness in a trial. He was scared. He lied on the stand. The text continued, his thumbs never slowing, his words, just a few false words. They sent an innocent man to prison. Matteo. He did not survive his illness. He died a year later. I took his guilt. I saw what a single wrong word could do, the damage it could cause, a life ruined. His final message made her heart ache. So I stopped. I made a vow. I would never harm anyone with words again. My silence is my atonement. Nora let out a breath she did not know she was holding. This was not a physical ailment. This was a penance, a lifelong act of contrition for a sin that was not even his. His silence was not weakness. It was a fortress of guilt. She looked at this powerful, broken man, and for the first time that night, she did not feel alone. He understood the weight of a corrupted past. Her phone vibrated on the table, a harsh buzz that broke the spell. The text from Cassian. Pier 9 at dawn. Trust no badges. Dawn. Nora looked out the window. The rain was letting up, but the sky was shifting from black to a deep, bruised purple. It was close. Rowan stood, tossing a $20 bill on the table for the cocoa. He looked at her, his expression clear. Stay here. You are safe now. Nora stood too, adrenaline surging back, sharpening her fatigue into resolve. No, I am not hiding. Not this time. That USB in my pocket is my leverage. That Oh My card is my key. And your father is walking into a trap set by Marco Silas. Rowan shook his head, a sharp, negative gesture. Too dangerous. You need me, she insisted, meeting his intense gaze. I am the one they will underestimate. I am the one your father gave the drive to. I am not a liability. I am your cover. I am going to Pier 9. He studied her, seeing the steel that had replaced her fear. He saw the same drive for justice, the same exhaustion with the world's lies. He hesitated, then gave a single, curt nod. He pulled out his phone, typed one more thing, and showed her. I trust you. A few texts from his phone, and they had a location. 2 blocks away, on Harbor Street, was an old blue sedan, keys under the mat, a ghost car. Nora slid into the driver's seat. I drive, she said. You watch. He nodded, his eyes already scanning the mirrors before she even started the engine. The streets were empty, gleaming blacktop under the emerging pre-dawn light. She drove toward the water, the smell of salt and diesel in the air. Rowan's body tensed. He did not say anything, just tapped the glass of the passenger side mirror. Nora glanced. Far behind them, a dark shape, a black SUV. It was running without headlights in the gloom, a classic, arrogant tale. Oh my orchid, Nora whispered, her knuckles white on the wheel. Rowan shrugged. It does not matter. Hold on, Nora said. She saw an opening, a dark, tiled service tunnel under the main causeway. She wrenched the wheel, and the old sedan's tires screamed on the wet pavement as she plunged into the darkness. The black SUV accelerated, its engine roaring as it followed them into the tunnel. Rowan was already moving. He had leaned over, grabbing her bag from the floor. He rummaged for a second and pulled out a small, glass bottle of perfume. He looked at her, a silent question. She nodded. Do it. The SUV was closing, its heavy grille filling their rearview mirror. Rowan opened the back door just a crack. The noise was deafening. He waited, his timing perfect, until the SUV was right on their tail, preparing to ram. With a powerful flick of his wrist, he threw the bottle. It shattered on the concrete directly in front of the SUV. The tail car, going at least 60, hit the sudden, slick patch of perfume and oil. Nora looked in the mirror. The SUV was sliding, fishtailing wildly, out of control. It slammed hard into the concrete tunnel wall, a grinding shriek of metal and a shower of orange sparks. Nora stomped on the accelerator, bursting out of the tunnel and back into the misty morning. They had lost the tail. They reached Pier 9. The world was shades of gray and blue. The rain had stopped, leaving a thick, cold fog that clung to the water. The only sounds were the groaning of steel cables from the massive container cranes overhead and the distant cry of a gull. They got out of the car. The air was heavy with salt. And they saw him, Cassian Verratti, when he was standing alone next to a massive, rust-streaked shipping container. The number 13 was stenciled on its side in faded white paint. "You came," Cassian's voice cut through the fog. He looked at Nora, his eyes approving. "And you brought the collateral. A wise choice. Give me the USB, Miss Vale, and you can walk away. I will grant you your freedom." "Father." The voice was not Rowan's. It came from the fog. Dre Archer, the director of the OMI, stepped into view, his hands in the pockets of his expensive coat. He looked smug, always so dramatic. "Cassian." "Dre," Cassian replied, his tone like ice. Then another figure emerged from the mist, high heels clicking on the wet concrete. A woman in a perfectly tailored suit, her red hair a slash of color in the gray. Nora's blood froze. She knew that face. Lila Crane, the most ruthless, high-profile lawyer in Port Sterling, the public and very clean face of the Orchid Syndicate. Lila Crane walked up to Dre Archer, smiled, and he put a familiar hand on her shoulder. They stood together, facing Cassian. It was not OMI versus Orchid. It was not OMI helping Verratti. The real enemy, the true alliance, was OMI and the Orchid Syndicate, and Cassian Verratti and his silent son had just walked right into their trap. The fog hung thick and gray, a cold shroud over the confrontation. It muffled the sounds of the city, leaving only the four players in a silent, high-stakes game. Dre Archer, director of the OMI, stood with Lila Crane, the legal face of the Orchid Syndicate. They were a portrait of corrupt power, an unholy alliance of law and crime. Dre Archer spoke first, his voice carrying the full weight of his office, a performance for an unseen audience. "Cassian Verratti, on behalf of the Office of Metropolitan Integrity, I am placing you under investigative arrest. We have credible evidence linking the Verratti Consortium to a vast international money laundering operation." Lila Crane smiled, a thin, satisfied cut. "It is a matter of national security. Cassian, a threat to the stability of Port Sterling's financial systems. We need the Silo 13 master key. Now." Cassian Verratti actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, and utterly mirthless sound. "National security," he scoffed. "You coat your greed in the flag. Dre, you do not want the key to stop anything. You want it to erase your own tracks. Silo 13 is not just a vault, it is a black book. It is a ledger of every bribe, every backroom deal, every judicial favor you and your associates," he nodded at Lila, "have ever made. You do not want to lock the vault, you want to burn the library." Nora's blood ran cold. The USB drive in her pocket felt like it was burning. It was not just data, it was not just financial records, a manifest, a key. She finally understood. It was the witness index, the names, the locations, the testimonies of everyone who had ever dared to speak against the OMI Orchid Alliance, all kept under Cassian's protection. If she handed over that drive, every informant, every whistleblower, every person like her father would be identified. They would not just be silenced, they would be erased. As if summoned by the thought, a new figure stepped out of the fog, Marco Silas. He was no longer in his supervisor uniform, but in the same dark tactical gear as the men from the garage. He held a tablet. "We do not have time for this, Cassian Sut," Satsi said, his voice grating. He was the broker, the muscle connecting the OMI's badges to the Orchid's guns. "The director is giving you a polite way out. Take it, or we can choose the hard way." He tapped the tablet, and the screen lit up. It showed grainy, black and white footage, the parking garage. It showed Rowan, moving with that lethal grace, disabling the 4 Orchid men. Assault, aggravated battery, resisting a lockdown order. Lila Crane purred, ticking off the charges. The footage is clean. It shows your son, the silent, violent heir, attacking 4 men who were merely assisting an OMI investigation, Cassian finished, his voice dripping with contempt. A clean-cut legal trap, Lila said. Give us the key, Cassian, or your son spends the next 20 years in a cell, and I will personally make sure his silence is interpreted as arrogance by the jury. Nora looked at Rowan. His face was granite, unmoving, but his eyes were fixed on the tablet screen, on his own violence. She felt his hand brush her side. She looked down. He was holding his phone, angled away from their enemies. His thumb had been flying. Don't give them the drive. There is a network copy, a dead man's switch. I just need to activate the satellite uplink. Stall for 20 minutes. Nora's heart was a drum. 20 minutes. Cassian Verratti sighed, a theatrical gesture of defeat. It seems you have me, Dre, you, Lila, a perfectly sprung trap. You win. He looked at Nora, his gaze heavy. The girl. She has the key. She will give it to you. Dre and Lila smiled, a shared look of triumph. However, Cassian continued, the key is useless without the hardware. The drive is paired to the primary server. He gestured, with a magnate's flourish, to the massive, rusted container marked 13. The transaction must happen here, in person. He stepped to the side of the container and unlatched a heavy steel bar. With a groan of rusted metal, he pulled the heavy doors open. It was not a shipping container. Inside, bathed in the cool blue-white light of high-powered electronics, was a mobile server room. Racks of humming servers, liquid-cooled, were bolted to the floor. A massive satellite uplink dish was folded against the ceiling. You built your black book a bunker. Dre breathed, his eyes wide with greed. He stepped forward. Activate it, then give me the drive. Cassian nodded. He pressed a sequence of keys on a wall-mounted panel. The servers spun up with a rising whine. It is done. Nora, the drive. Nora looked at Rowan. Rowan looked at his father. Dre Archer raised his hand, a sharp chopping gesture to the fog. Take them. It was not OMI, not the real OMI. It was a dozen men in black tactical gear, the same as Silas's, but with OMI stenciled on their vests. A private army, flying a false flag. They swarmed the pier, weapons raised. The play begins, Cassian Verratti whispered, and then he winked, a quick, sharp blink, just for Nora. Boom, boom, boom! A series of percussion grenades, pre-planted on the pier, detonated. They released not shrapnel, but a blindingly thick white smoke. Sirens, not from police, but from the pier's own alarm system, began to wail, a disorienting shriek. The world vanished. Dre was screaming orders. Get the drive, get the girl. Nora was grabbed, but not by an enemy. She was lifted off her feet. Rowan, he had scooped her up in a single, powerful motion. He held her against his chest. One arm clamped around her waist like a steel band, the other shielding her head, tucking her face into his shoulder. Run! Cassian's voice boomed over the chaos. Rowan ran. He plunged into the labyrinth of shipping containers, his footsteps sure on the wet metal. Nora could feel the tension in his arm, a fine, high-frequency tremor. He was moving with impossible speed, but his hand, the one holding her head, was shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from a lifetime of contained force, finally unleashed. They burst out of the maze and onto a loading gantry, a narrow steel walkway that led to one of the massive container cranes. They're cutting the signal, a voice shouted below them. It was Marco. Rowan did not stop. He ran up the metal stairs, taking them 3 at a time, pulling Nora with him now. Their hands locked. They scrambled up to the crane's operator cab, a glass box suspended 100 feet in the air. From here, they could see the whole pier. The white smoke was dissipating. The fake OMI team was fanning out. Nora saw it. On a roof of a nearby warehouse, a man was hunkered down over a piece of equipment, a portable antenna, pointed at the sky. an OMI repeater designed to jam all other signals and control their own communications. "Rowan E," she panted, pointing. "They're comms. It is controlling the field." He looked at her, then at the antenna. He understood. While he stood guard at the door, Nora leaned out of the cab. Her hand found the crane spotlight controls. It was not what she was looking for. She saw a long, steel maintenance hook on a chain. "Cover me," she said, though he could not hear. She grabbed the heavy hook, leaned her body precariously out over the drop, and swung it. It sailed through the air, a dark pendulum. Clang! It missed. The man at the antenna looked up, shouting. Rowan's phone was in his hand. "They see us." "Again," Nora muttered. She pulled the heavy hook back, her muscles screaming. She swung again, harder, leading the target. The hook flew. It struck the delicate parabolic dish of the repeater antenna with a satisfying thud. The dish, knocked off its axis, spun uselessly on its tripod. On the pier below, Nora saw the OMI team members lift their hands to their earpieces, tapping them in confusion. Their communications were blind. For 30 seconds, maybe a minute. 30 golden seconds. They did not stay in the exposed glass cab. Rowan found a latch on the floor, leading to a small, cramped maintenance room built into the crane's body. It was dry, warm from the humming transformers, and smelled of hot metal and ozone. It was a metal womb, high above the danger. The rain, which had been a mist, now began to fall in earnest, a hard, rhythmic drumming on the steel roof above them. It was the only sound, a private soundtrack to the sudden peace. Rowan bolted the hatch, securing them inside. Nora slid down against a bank of electrical panels, her legs giving out. She was panting, not from exertion, but from the sudden, crushing release of terror. Her face was streaked with grime, and she was unaware of a dark smudge of grease from the maintenance hook that now sat high on her cheekbone. Rowan stood in the center of the small room, his chest heaving, his own adrenaline slowly receding. He looked at her, and his eyes, those stormy, guarded eyes, finally let the mask slip. He moved, crouching in front of her. He was so close. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. He did not touch her, not at first. He just looked at her, his gaze tracing the lines of her face as if memorizing her. Then, with a tenderness that was a stunning contrast to the man who had disabled 4 attackers, he raised his hand. His fingers were long, steady, and clean. He gently, so gently, brushed the back of his knuckles against her cheek, his touch feather-light, before his thumb found the smudge of grease. He wiped it away, his touch lingering, his eyes locked on hers. Nora stopped breathing. In that tiny room, with the rain hammering down, she saw all of him. She saw the violent efficiency. She saw the cold calculation. And now she saw this in intensity that was not anger, but a profound, desperate loneliness. She saw the vulnerability of a man who had chosen a fortress of silence. And she saw the apology he lived every single day. A life sentence of atonement, all held in that one, silent, storm-gray gaze. Her own hand, still shaking, lifted. She did not know she was going to do it until it was done. She pressed her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. She needed to know he was real. Beneath her hand, his heart was a runaway train, a wild, frantic rhythm that matched her own. It was a drumming that said everything his voice could not. I am here. I am alive. I am terrified. The distance between them, measured in inches, became charged with a new, unspoken language. It was not a question of if, but how. Their breathing synced in the small, warm space. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Nora did not move. She tilted her head, a silent invitation. The first kiss was not a kiss. It was a discovery. It was slow, hesitant, and yet profoundly certain. His lips were firm, warm, and they met hers with a sense of reverence, as if he was learning a forgotten language. It was a question and an answer, a statement of fact, you are here. Nora's own fear and exhaustion melted, replaced by a sudden, sharp jolt of connection. Her hand, the one on his chest, fisted in the material of his jacket, pulling him infinitesimally closer. Her other hand, no longer shaking, came up to cup the back of his neck, her fingers tangling in the short, soft hair at his nape. His own hand moved from her face to her back, splaying wide, supporting her, holding her steady as if she might break. He broke the kiss, but only by an inch. They rested their foreheads together, sharing the same air, their breath mingled. A silent vow exchanged in the warm, metallic dark, "Stay with me. You are safe with me." The rain on the roof was a symphony now, a wild, rhythmic beat that matched the thrumming in her chest. Rowan, his eyes still closed, pulled back. He shrugged out of his suit jacket, the one that was damp from their run in the mist, and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was heavy, and it smelled of him cedar, ozone, and something uniquely his. Nora buried her face in the warm wool, a small, involuntary smile touching her lips. When she looked up, she did not let him move away. She kept hold of his shirt, and with a gentle pull, brought him back. This time, the kiss was different. The exploration was over. This was a statement. It was deeper, more confident, a shared hunger born of terror and relief. His mouth moved on hers with a desperate, careful passion, a lifetime of unspoken words pouring into a single, physical act. Her fingers laced together behind his neck, and his arm, no longer just supporting her, wrapped fully around her waist, pulling her flush against him. They were a tangle of limbs, damp clothes, and pounding hearts, pressed together in the dark. It was not hurried, but it was total. It was an acknowledgement. Nora could feel the solid, corded muscle of his body through his thin shirt, the steady, grounding weight of him. This was not about sex. It was about survival. It was about two people, battered by the storm, finding a single point of stable ground. They kissed until they were both breathless, until the world was nothing but the sound of the rain and the feeling of his lips on hers, the secure circle of his arms, when they finally, reluctantly, pulled apart. Nora's voice was a ragged whisper. She looked into his eyes, now dark with emotion. "Don't be silent," she whispered, her thumb stroking the hard line of his jaw. "Not if it hurts." Rowan's expression broke. A wave of some powerful, unreadable emotion passed over his face. He nodded, just once. A sharp, pained, grateful gesture. Then, he took his fingers and pressed them gently to her lips, as if to seal her words, and then to his own, a promise. "I heard you." A red light on the panel behind her, one she had not noticed, began to flash. A silent alarm. Below them, a siren chirped, low and urgent. The spell was broken. They stared at the flashing light, then at each other. They pulled apart, the loss of his warmth an immediate ache. Rowan was already on his feet, helping her up, his jacket still securely around her shoulders. He was once again the soldier, the silent guardian. But as their eyes met, something new was there, an unbreakable, unspoken covenant. This was no longer an accident, an alliance of circumstance. Their love, born in chaos and sealed in a quiet storm, was now a choice. The red alarm light pulsed in the cramped maintenance room, a silent heartbeat of danger. Nora's phone, clutched in her hand, vibrated, a text from an unknown number. Cassian, it was not words, only a string of encrypted coordinates and a single schematic. Rowan looked at it, his eyes scanning the data, then looked out the cab window toward the far end of the pier. He pointed, a secondary satellite tower, half hidden by a block of containers, the backup server hub. Their mission was clear. The main server in Container 13 was now a decoy, a trap. The true data, the witness index, was being held at this auxiliary hub, and the USB drive in Nora's pocket was the two-factor authentication key. They had to get there, plug it in, and broadcast the truth of Silo 13 before Dre Archer and the Orchid Syndicate realized their error and wiped the backup. Rowan's own phone buzzed, a news alert from a Port Sterling tabloid. He angled the screen toward her. The headline was Stark Breaking PPD Investigating Potential Hostage Situation Following Halcyon Gala. Waitress Nora Vale allegedly abducted by silent Veradier. "They are framing us," Nora whispered, a cold fury replacing her fear. They were painting her as a damsel, Rowan as a violent kidnapper, discrediting any information they might leak before it was even out. She pulled out her own phone. She still wore Rowan's heavy suit jacket. She opened the camera, switched it to video, and hit record. She did not show her face. She angled it down, filming her own hand, the hand holding the matte black USB drive. The cuff of her black and white uniform was visible, streaked with the grease she had gotten from the crane. "My name is Nora Vale," she said, her voice low and steady, robbing them of the victim narrative. "I am not a hostage. I am a witness. The Office of Metropolitan Integrity and the Orchid Syndicate are working together. Silo 13 is their blackmail file, and they are trying to bury it. If I disappear, look for Director Dre Archer." She paused, her voice hardening. "I am not a pawn, and I am not alone." She stopped recording, a 45-second truth bomb. Rowan took the phone, his fingers flying, uploading the clip to a dozen anonymous, decentralized video servers. It was out. "I have to climb," Rowan typed, his expression grim. "The main transmitter is jammed. I have to install the backup broadcaster on that tower. And I have to get to the server hub at the base," Nora finished, understanding the pincer movement. "The drive is the key." He handed her a single, small earpiece. "Listen only." He signed. He looked at her, a long, hard stare that conveyed everything he could not say. "Be safe." Then he was gone, a shadow slipping out of the cab and melting into the pre-dawn maze of containers. Nora's phone rang. Private number. She put the earpiece in and answered, her voice deliberately shaky. "Hello? Miss Vale, this is Lila Crane." The lawyer's voice was like smooth, cold glass. "You are in a great deal of trouble, but I am a pragmatist. I do not care about you. I care about that drive. Dre Archer wants you eliminated. I just want the data. Give me the USB, and I can guarantee Rowan Veradi's safety. A clear path out of the city? For him. You have my word." "The offer was poison. I do not know," Nora stammered, stalling for time, already running toward the coordinates. He is hurt. I need to think." "You have 5 minutes," Lila said. "Then the offer expires, and I let Marco Silas find you." The line went dead. Nora ran. The coordinates led her deep into the container maze. Every rusted steel wall looked the same. Clang, the sound of a boot on a metal walkway, somewhere behind her. "Marco, I know you are in here, girl," his voice echoed. "Just give it up." Nora ducked into a narrow gap between two containers. Dead end. She backtracked, her heart hammering. She remembered Rowan in the garage. She grabbed a small fire extinguisher from a wall mount. She heard him getting closer. She stepped out, held the nozzle, and filled the narrow corridor with a blinding white cloud of foam. As Marco cursed and choked, Nora ran. She dug in her uniform pocket, pulling out a handful of metal bottle caps she had collected during her shift. As she ran, she dropped them, shiny side up, creating a false trail, leading him left while she veered right toward the tower. High above, Rowan was scaling the external ladder of the signal tower. The rain was steady now, making the rungs slick. Ping! A bullet sparked off the steel, centimeters from his hand. A sniper. On the warehouse roof, the same one where she had disabled the repeater. Rowan did not stop. He kept climbing, using the tower's central column as cover. He reached the top platform, the transmitter box in sight. The sniper fired again. Rowan dropped flat, crawling. He saw the sniper moving, adjusting his position for a better angle. It was the man's final mistake. Rowan moved like a phantom. He crossed a narrow gantry that connected the tower to the warehouse, dropped onto the roof behind the sniper. The man was still sighting the tower. Rowan rose up. He did not use a weapon, a clean, silent chokehold, a disarm. The sniper was unconscious in less than 10 seconds. Rowan bound his hands with a zip tie from his own pocket. He looked down. 2 real port security guards, not oh my, but the official pier patrol were making their rounds. Rowan whistled, a sharp, piercing sound. When they looked up, he pointed at the bound sniper, then vanished back toward the tower. No killing. Clean. Down on the pier, the smoke had cleared. Cassian Verratti stood by the decoy server container, facing Dre Archer and his false OMI team. "This is over, Cassian," Dre sneered, stepping forward. "Is it?" Cassian replied, his voice calm. "I wonder if you remember this." The massive LED advertising screen on the side of the pier terminal flickered to life. It did not show shipping schedules. It showed a scanned document, an old, yellowed piece of paper. "That," Cassian said, his voice amplified by the pier's PA system, "is an executive order authorizing enhanced interrogation, signed by you 20 years ago, the interrogation that led to the confession of an innocent man, the man who framed Nora Vale's father." Dre Archer's face went white. He stared at the signature on the screen, his own name, undeniable, broadcast for the entire waterfront to see. Dre panicked. He screamed into his radio, "Shut it down! Kill the power! Kill the grid, now!" Lila Crane, on her own phone, gave the same order to her Orchid contacts. Suddenly, the world went black. The pier lights, the cranes, the massive LED screen all dead. The high-pitched whine of the servers in Container 13 died, a rolling blackout. The Orchid Syndicate had cut power to the entire district. Nora had just reached the server hub. The door slid open, but the room was dark. The upload had been stopped. Rowan, on the tower, saw the grid die. He also saw, 200 yards away, the auxiliary power station, its red offline light glowing on a backup battery. He tapped his earpiece, just once, a signal he knew she would be listening for, and then spoke, his first word to her, a single, rough command. "Auxiliary." Nora ran. She found the station, a heavy metal box. The main breaker was thrown, a massive, heavy-duty manual switch. She tried to pull it, stuck from disuse. She grabbed a rubber insulation rod from the wall, wedged it into the handle, and threw her entire body weight against it, groaning with the effort. "K-Chunk?" The lights flickered, the cranes groaned, the high-pitched whine of the servers in Nora's hub started back up. The LED screen on the pier flashed back on, the damning document still visible. On Nora's server monitor, a blue bar appeared. "Uploading Silo 13 Witness Manifest. Time remaining 2 minutes." On the pier, Dre Archer and Lila Crane looked at the live screen, then at each other, their faces masks of pure, unadulterated panic. The upload bar on the auxiliary server screen, visible only to Nora, pulsed. "Upload 90%. Dre Archer, his face a mask of apoplectic rage, stared at his own signature on the massive LED screen. He had lost control. He had lost the narrative. He snarled, playing his final, desperate card. "This is not a negotiation," he roared, pulling a folded legal warrant from his coat. "Rowan Verratti, you are under arrest by the authority of the OMI for the aggravated assault of 4 individuals in the Halcyon garage." 2 of the false flag agents, abandoning all pretense, surged forward. Rowan, having just dropped from the signal tower to join Nora, had no time to react. He saw them coming, but they were on him, grabbing his arms, wrenching them behind his back with brutal efficiency. The sharp, metallic ratchet of handcuffs snapping shut was the loudest sound on the pier. "No!" Nora screamed, running from the server hub, the USB drive still clutched in her hand. "You cannot do this. It was self-defense. I was there." She flew at Dre, but a solid, immovable object blocked her path. Cassian Verratti. He stepped in front of Nora, shielding her. He was unarmed, his hands empty, but his presence was more formidable than any weapon. He stared at Dre, his eyes like chips of ice. "Dre." Cassian's voice was dangerously quiet, a low vibration that cut through the tension. "You will remove those cuffs, Touch my son again, and I will ensure that every media outlet in this country sees not just your signature on that screen, but the video of your perjury from 20 years ago. You will be undone before breakfast." "You are finished, old man," Dre spat, emboldened by the men at his back. While the two men were locked in a battle of wills, a shadow detached itself from the chaos. Lila Crane. She was a shark, sensing the one drop of blood in the water that could turn the tide. She glided up to Nora, her voice a confidential, venomous whisper meant only for her. "Look at him," Lila murmured, gesturing to Cassian. "The powerful protector. The Dawn. Are you sure he is the one telling the truth?" "Think Nora, who had the power, the connections, and the motive to frame a lowly city inspector all those years ago, who benefited from that high-rise being built." Nora's blood ran cold. The words hit her like a physical blow. The Verratti Consortium. They owned half of downtown. "It was him! Nora!" Lila hissed, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Cassian Verratti is the man who destroyed your father, and you are standing here, holding the key to his salvation." Doubt. It was a cold, sickening poison, flooding Nora's system. She looked at Cassian, his face hard as he stared down Dre. She looked at Rowan, held captive, his eyes fixed on her, pleading, desperate. Her voice was torn, ragged. She turned, her whole body shaking, and faced the Dawn. "Is it true? My father, the inspector, was it you?" Lila smiled. This was the break she needed. Cassian Verratti did not look at Lila, did not look at Dre. He looked only at Nora. His gaze was absolute, unwavering, cutting through the fog of lies. "No." "You are lying," Lila shouted. "No," Cassian repeated, his voice carrying over the rising wind. "It was not me. It was your partners at the OMI. They falsified the records to cover their own investments. Your father was an honest man. Miss Vale, a rarity in this city." How do you know that?" Nora demanded, her heart breaking, desperate to believe him. "Because," Cassian said, his voice hard as iron, "I keep my own receipts, the true records. The original inspection reports the bank transfers to the OMI agents who framed him. I have them. They are in Silo 13, and in approximately." He glanced at the server hub. 1 minute. The entire world will have them, too. Nora looked at Rowan. The cuffs bit into his wrists. He was silent, but his eyes were shouting. A frantic, desperate language. "Trust him. Trust me. Trust yourself." He saw the doubt on her face. The poison Lila had planted. He shook his head. "A minute." Violent gesture. "No." Nora's resolve hardened. She knew those eyes. She knew that man. She had felt his heart beat against hers. She took a deep breath, turned, and stood shoulder to shoulder with Cassian, facing Lila and Dre. "It is over, Lila." "No!" a voice roared. Marco Silas. He had emerged from the container maze, his face a mask of feral fury. He saw the upload progressing, his own name likely scrolling past in the data dump. He saw Rowan, cuffed and vulnerable. He pulled the black ceramic knife, the one he had held to Nora's throat. "Verratti!" he screamed, and he lunged, not at Cassian but at the helpless, bound son. It happened in a fraction of a second. Rowan saw him coming but was immobilized by the guards. Nora screamed. Cassian moved. He did not hesitate. He did not try to block. He spun, interposing his own body, not as a shield, but as a target. He raised his left arm. Marco's lunge was powerful, aimed at Rowan's heart. The black ceramic blade plunged deep into Cassian Verratti's forearm, just below the elbow. There was a wet, sickening sound. Marco yanked the blade free. Cassian did not cry out. He did not flinch. He just stood there, a statue of absolute will. His arm now slashed open. Dark blood, almost black in the pier's dim light, welled up and began to pour down the sleeve of his white shirt, dripping from his fingertips onto the wet concrete. He looked at his son, then at Marco, his expression unchanged. "Upload 92%. The air changed, a deep, Mechanical whump, whump, whump beat down from the sky. The fog, which had been clinging to the pier, was suddenly ripped apart. A massive black helicopter, an unmarked military-grade machine, descended from the clouds, its searchlight blinding them all. Orchid. The rotor wash was a physical force, a hurricane that threatened to tear them from their feet. "Kill it, kill Container 13, Dre Archer shrieked over the noise, pointing at the decoy container. Now! The helicopter banked, and Nora saw the glint of a heavy machine gun mounted in the side door. Rowan, in a violent burst of cuffed adrenaline, broke the grip of the agents holding him. He lunged for Nora, tackling her, pulling her behind a massive steel support pillar. The helicopter's gun opened up. Bullets sparked and shrieked off the metal, tearing the decoy container to shreds, ripping through the decoy servers. Crouched behind the pillar, Nora's face was inches from Rowan's. He was shielded by the steel, shielding her with his bound body. Their eyes locked in the chaotic strobe of the searchlight and gunfire. This was it. There was no surrender in his gaze. Only fire. Cashin Varadi was still standing, exposed. The helicopter's wind tore at his clothes. His left arm was a ruin of blood. He looked at his son, hidden behind the pillar. He raised his voice, a raw, powerful command that cut through the thunder of the helicopter and the gunfire. "End this!" "Rowan," Cashin roared. "A vow is a shield, not a cage. Break your silence. Break it when you must, to save the one you love." Sirens converged as Orchid gunmen forced them back toward the Halcyon. Under the rotor's howl, they were herded through a private service elevator, and then the world contracted to the rooftop helipad of the Halcyon. The world had contracted to the rooftop helipad of the Halcyon, a circle of wet concrete lashed by rain and the deafening, physical force of the Orchid Syndicate helicopter's rotor wash. Dre Archer and Lila Crane stood near the aircraft, their faces lit by its strobing lights, shielded by the last of their false OMI agents. They had Rowan, his hands still bound in steel cuffs. They had Nora, who clutched the USB drive, the key they believed was their last obstacle. "It is over! Miss Vale!" Lila Crane screamed over the hurricane of wind, her voice thin and metallic. "Your upload failed. We are leaving, and you are either giving us that drive or you are all staying here as a tragic accident." Lila raised her hand, her fingers spread. 3. Dre Archer had his own handgun out, trained not on Cassian, who was kneeling and bleeding, but on Rowan. 2 agents held Rowan fast. 2? Nora's heart hammered. She looked at Rowan. His face was granite, his eyes a storm of silent fury. She knew the upload had not failed. It was still climbing. She just needed seconds. She stepped forward, her hand outstretched, but she did not hold out the drive. She moved toward Rowan, and in a move of desperate, final loyalty, she seized his cuffed hand, lacing her fingers with his. "If we stay silent today," Nora screamed, her voice ripped from her throat and thrown into the wind, "the whole city stays silent forever." "One," Lila shrieked. "Dre, end it!" Rowan Varadi looked at Nora's hand locked with his. He looked at his bleeding father. He looked at the gun aimed at his own chest. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the first in over a decade that was not for himself, but for her. Enough. The word was a shock. It was low, guttural, rough from years of disuse, like the grinding of tectonic plates. The wind itself seemed to pause. The agents, Dre, Lila. Everyone froze. The silent son of the Varadi Consortium had spoken. He yanked his arm, the agent stumbling. He said it again, louder this time, a raw, powerful declaration that tore from his soul. "She is with me." It was the trigger. The explosion of noise was not a gunshot. It was the sound of the heavy glass doors to the rooftop lounge bursting open. The Halcyon's true security, the men loyal to the Varadi name, poured onto the roof, their tactical flashlights clicking on, blinding Dre's men in a coordinated flood of light. And across the city, the massive digital billboards on the surrounding skyscrapers, the ones that Nora had found the secondary connection for, flickered to life. Her camera feed, the helipad, the guns, Dre Archer's panicked face, Cashin's blood in the rain, it was all suddenly live, broadcast to Port Sterling. Dre Archer saw it. He saw the security. He saw the camera feeds. He saw his entire world evaporating. He screamed, a wordless sound of animal terror, and he swung his gun, not at Rowan, but at Nora, the source of his ruin. No. Cassian Verratti, who had been on one knee, launched himself forward, a wounded lion protecting his family. He slammed into Dre's body, not just his arm. The aim was deflected. The gun fired, the shot went wide, missing Nora, but the bullet tore through the fleshy part of Cassian's left shoulder. A second wound. Father. It was not a word, it was a roar. Rowan Verratti, again. He broke his silence, screaming his father's name. In a surge of cuffed, primal strength, he threw his body backwards, smashing the heads of the two agents holding him together, and broke free. And at that exact moment, on the giant screens across the city, the image of the helipad was replaced by a torrent of white text on a black background. The upload bar from Nora's server hub had just hit 100%. Silo 13 was public. It was a data flood. Lists of bribes, scanned copies of the falsified evidence that had destroyed Nora's father, offshore bank accounts linking the Orchid Syndicate directly to the OMI. It was all there. The helicopter, its mission a catastrophic failure, its owners exposed, banked hard, and vanished into the night. From the streets below, a new sound of sirens rose, this time clean and sharp. The doors to the roof burst open again. Men in dark blue jackets marked FERT, Federal Ethics and Rackets Task Force. The citywide broadcast pinged federal back channels. Minutes later, sirens cut clean through the dawn. FERT stormed the roof. FERT hands in the air. Everyone on the ground. Dre Archer stood frozen, his gun dangling, staring at the screens. Lila Crane, the ultimate pragmatist, slowly, calmly, raised her hands. Marco Silas, who had been cowering by the door, made a break for the stairs. He hit a patch of rain-slicked metal, and his feet went out from under him. Two FERT agents were on him in a second, a knee in his back, his hands cuffed. Cassian Verratti's strength finally gave out. He sank to one knee. Rowan, his cuffs still dangling from one wrist, rushed to him, catching him before he fell. Cassian looked up at his son, his face pale, his shirt ruined, but he was smiling. Rowan leaned his forehead against his father's, his own eyes wet. "I am here," he said, his voice raw but perfectly clear. "I am here." Nora ran to them, her own tears finally falling, mixing with the rain. She dropped to her knees, helping Rowan support the man who had saved them both, her arms wrapping around the two Verratti men, a broken, battered, and finally complete family, huddled on a rooftop as the storm passed. The dawn that rose over Port Sterling was sharp and clean. The news was an avalanche. The truth of Silo 13 had dismantled the OMI and shattered the Orchid Syndicate. Nora Vale, the waitress, became the city's key witness, but after giving her testimony, she refused every television interview, every book deal. She chose her new, quiet life. That evening, the lights of the Halcyon Gala were dark. The helipad was scrubbed clean. Rowan found Nora standing at the edge, looking out at the city. He walked up behind her, his footsteps quiet, but she did not startle. He put his hands on her shoulders, the touch gentle, protective. His voice, when he spoke, was still hoarse, a beautiful, gravelly sound that was already the only one she wanted to hear. "I do not need the vow of silence anymore," he said, his voice warm in the cool night air. "Not if I have you." Nora turned in his arms, her heart feeling too large for her chest. She put her hand on his cheek, feeling the warmth, the reality of him. "You never needed it," she whispered. He leaned in, and his kiss was soft, a promise of 1,000 conversations yet to come. It was not an ending. It was a future, one of love, of freedom, and of facing the storms together. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We are so grateful to have you here. Where in the world are you listening from? Please let us know in the comments. We love to see where our stories travel and to read your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Mafia Boss Story, like this video, and support us by hitting that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners.